For Sunday, November 15th, you found the Georgia Gang. Topping our agenda today, Tyrone Brooks will go to the big house. Sheriff Victor Hill is indicted, and President Obama is rebuffed by a high federal court. Some of the stories up for grabs on the Georgia Gang.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
And we're glad you could be with us on this fine Sunday. We send a shout out to our colleague Alexis Scott, who is recuperating from hip surgery. It seems to be something going around on the Georgia Gang. And with us today is Theron Johnson. We're glad you could be with us.
Good to be back.
Yep, and you'll be with us for a few weeks, and that's a good thing. So let's begin with, really, it's sad. Tyrone Brooks, a guy I've known for, 40 years. 40 years. Is going to prison for a year and a day. Everybody has walked on eggshells about this. Everybody has paid tribute to him as a civil rights leader, but he wasn't, because the money went into his pocket, Phil. And the judge, Amy Totenberg, gave him a year and a day, and there's a reason for that.
Well, that's right. He siphoned off the money into his personal account from a labor union and several corporations, and it was $1 million. And the key, as we've discussed last week, was that he really didn't show remorse. You remember when he first walked out after he pled guilty, he said, "I'm not guilty." And you don't do that with a judge and with prosecutors. You have to show some remorse if you want some leniency.
Jeffy did the same thing the day after he was sentenced. He went out to Walton County to that bridge that he's been talking about, Moore's Mill.
Is it,
Anyway, he went to that bridge, and I've been out there with him, so I'm allowed to joke about it and forget the name. But even there, he said, "Look, I was just guilty of sloppy bookkeeping."
Well, I think that's how
$1 million.
He sees it, that he was guilty of sloppy bookkeeping. First of all, the year and a day, of course, is because he can get 15%
Right.
off for good behavior. And so he'd probably spend about 9 or 10 months in jail. He's 70 years old. There's an opportunity for him to really reflect on his life and on his contributions, and those contributions are real. Even if he was sloppy in his bookkeeping, and he did transfer some nonprofit money to personal funds,
but
he did not steal from taxpayers, as others have in recent days and months. And he has done well.
But it's still stealing.
Trying to find the perpetrators in that heinous lynching.
He seemed to be blaming the FBI for his troubles.
Working year after year after year to change this state's flag. And I don't think that it would have changed were it not for the efforts of people like Tyrone, and Tyrone in particular. And so I think that the work that he did was real. The judge spent 90 minutes pontificating, presumably, and recounting many of these accomplishments. And but at the end of the day, and you and I had this discussion last week, she felt that she needed to give him some time. And we thought it'd be about a year, and it was a year and a day.
Well, and Theron, I'm struck by the fact that Tyrone Brooks is accused and convicted now, or pleaded to stealing $1 million over a period of many years. Elaine Boyer, the DeKalb County Commissioner, went to jail for longer for stealing $80,000. She got a 14-month term. There seems to be a terrible imbalance here.
Well, I totally agree with Jeff.
I think she did good work, too.
Well, I totally agree with Jeff. Listen, we on this panel, and most American people believe in giving folks a second chance. I mean, he came out. No one is basically disputing the point that he actually did do something wrong, and I think he's admitted to that. But at the end of the day, I mean, if you look at the bipartisan support that he's received from people on both sides of the aisles, folks are basically talking about the 30-plus years of service that Tyrone Brooks has gave to this country. I mean, the communities that he's helped transform is something that is to be accounted for. But look, stealing is stealing, and both in the Elaine Boyer case and the Tyrone Brooks case, they both were wrong for doing something. But I think the judge had to really look at this case long and hard, and a lot of folks disagree with the sentence. Some people agree with it, but at the end of the day, I think Tyrone would go and serve his time, and he'll come back out and be a very productive citizen.
And I agree with that. I think that stealing is stealing, but Elaine Boyer stole from me and you, Dick. She stole from the taxpayers.
True.
She took taxpayer dollars. She breached
that
contract
I'm a
that
Coke
she
shareholder, and he stole from Coca-Cola. He got money from Coca-Cola to do work that he never intended to perform.
I think that when you sign up as an elected official and you say that you're going to protect the public weal and you go and steal and put your hands in that cookie jar, you need to go to jail like Elaine Boyer did.
All right, now let's turn to a case that we have to pretend to be serious about this, because after all, a woman was shot. But Victor Hill was indicted by a grand jury in Gwinnett County. He's the sheriff of Clayton County, and he was indicted for a misdemeanor, reckless conduct, because in the course, as he said, of explaining law enforcement techniques to a real estate agent named Guinevere McCord, he shot her. Just kind of something that happens to everybody every day.
They were doing police training.
Police training,
We've
that's
seen
right.
that with a lot with police training here lately, right?
So he's been indicted, but, and I don't know what'll happen to his sheriff status. He's been down this road before, whether he'll lose his accreditation. But what I do know is it's an amazing twist there, and I'm going to throw this one right at you. Guinevere McCord is applying for a job at the Clayton County Sheriff's Office.
Well, let's look. Sheriff Hill has come out and basically shown how not only sad is as he responded to this whole, tragic sort of unfortunate event. I mean, look, she's his friend, and he came out and showed a tremendous amount of concern and remorse, not only to her but also to the family. I think her deciding to apply for a job has nothing to do with this case. I mean, he has complied and basically answered all the questions from the grand jury. He actually even made a testimony yesterday when he went before the jury. And so I think at the end of the day, look, let's just focus on the facts. The grand jury did its job. They indicted him, and I think he's going to plead his case.
That said, she could have applied for a job with the DeKalb County Sheriff, the Cobb County Sheriff,
Right.
but the Clayton County Sheriff?
Well,
you can't make this up, Phil.
Well, it's a bad joke in a way, and you talk to other sheriffs. I don't care what their politics is. Victor Hill's a joke and an embarrassment.
Victor Hill, I think, has done a lot of maturing in that job since he went in there in the first day, fired a whole bunch of folks, and cost the taxpayers of Clayton County an awful lot of money. He has had to mature, I think, in a lot of ways, but most certainly in the public spotlight. And he has done that. And over the course of a good period of time, we weren't hearing all of these controversial things coming out of Clayton County. Then you had this incident. Right. There have been how many police accidents where the cop keeps the job? And so my suspicion is, we're talking about a misdemeanor after all. He will keep his job. He will pay some nominal fine of $1,000 or whatever it is out there. He won't face any jail time. Everybody says that it was an accident, and we'll move on. As for a $25,000 a year job, how do you pay somebody back with a $25,000 a year job after you shot him? Right, and I mean, certainly this isn't some sort of quid pro quo.
You're saying then, you're saying that in the process of maturation, Victor Hill has gone from walking small to walking tall.
No, I'm going to tell you, if you talk to the residents of Clayton County, they would tell you Victor Hill is probably one of the most beloved and respected elected officials.
That's
there.
ridiculous.
No, I'm telling you, he's gotten Phil.
We are working journalists. You've never been in journalism, but journalists.
You got to look at
You got to look at the numbers. No, the information from the sheriff's office.
Looking at voting records.
No, I'm telling you, look at his voting record. That's one thing that you probably don't spend a lot of time doing.
Public service. How about looking at public service?
It's to Jeff's point. Up until this accident,
that's ridiculous.
Up until this accident, which is an unfortunate accident. I mean, a woman got shot. Let's show some remorse.
Yeah.
He was on the right track. He was doing a good job in Clayton County. And I think that he showed some very strong sense of humility. And he's torn up about this. I mean, people who know him, best friends of his, I mean, this was his friend. I mean, he is completely distraught.
After the shooting, he wouldn't say anything to the police. He was trying to cover this thing up.
No, I don't think that was the
case. I mean, even Danny Porter said in the newspaper.
Do you want a reckless lawman?
Even Danny Porter said in the newspaper that he wasn't cocky. He wasn't arrogant.
Yeah.
He was matter of fact in the courtroom. And I think that speaks to the fact that this is a guy who just got caught up in an accident, would like to move on from it. Right. The charges aren't that serious. We're talking about a misdemeanor.
It is. But it's not worth getting all lathered up about, but it's a bizarre story.
Don't go out on the firing range with him.
It's a bizarre story. All right, when we come back, DeKalb's loss. Is it a loss? DeKalb's loss is Cobb County's gain. Stay with us.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at fox5atlanta.com.
It's hard to phrase this one. Did DeKalb County lose this week or win this week when Arthur Blank and his new soccer club decided to take their training camp, their training facility, to the city of Marietta. DeKalb taxpayers were not particularly enamored of the deal with the soccer club, and now they don't have a soccer club. So they go to Marietta. In a conservative sense, it's a good thing, because Marietta had torn down blocks of substandard housing,
Right.
welfare housing, and happened to have this land available for Arthur Blank and the Atlanta Football Club.
Well, that's right. It's a soccer club. You're going to have practice fields. You're going to have a big complex. It's a $78 million investment. There's not the environmental problems. At first in DeKalb, they thought there were no environmental problems, but then, you know, presto, they find out that there's going to be more problems with remediation where the land was. And I think it's a great deal for Cobb County.
Well, one of the things we got to make sure we mention is that throughout this whole process, the city of Marietta optioned that particular land was an option on the table for the Falcons. And
True.
so even when they were looking at DeKalb, they sort of had that city of Marietta location as a backup.
Well, I think the problem in DeKalb was that Lee May and the commission never vetted it publicly. It was, in fact, there wasn't even any public comment on the day the county commission was ready to vote on it. So people felt like they'd been snookered in that deal. The terms look similar in Marietta to what they would have been in DeKalb. Marietta makes no money in tax receipts for 10 years, or essentially none. And then, though, they get a good bit of cash from the Atlanta United Football Club.
Well, Arthur Blank is the owner of the team, as we all know, and I think it's going to be a great deal. You know, you're going to have young people coming from all over
I agree.
to practice, and it's going to be a great complex.
6 fields. As a former soccer dad, I can tell you that's going to be a big draw. It really is. Because you've got hotels, you've got restaurants all around it. And you bring in these big regional tournaments, that's quite a deal. And congratulations to Marietta, I think, for doing the deal somewhat in the open, right? They got it done.
They've been transparent.
There we are. Now,
This time.
This time, he said.
See, I was trying to be positive about
oh, no. The Braves were Cobb County. This is the city of Marietta.
Oh, okay,
Let
there's
me
a difference.
Let's stay right there. I'm going to go off script here, so to speak. You went out and looked at the new Braves Stadium this week, since we're talking about Cobb County. What'd you see?
You know, believe it or not, time flies. It is the second year of construction, and it is amazing what is going on there. The engineering that you're watching, the scoreboards going up. But I think there's an additional footnote that we all ought to know. We've all talked on the broadcast and, of course, in Cobb County and everywhere, the traffic problems and the parking problems. The money, I found out, Tim Lee briefed me when I was over there the other day, there is $1 billion already in the pipeline for transportation improvements all in the area. I'll quickly just tell you, there's going to be additional lanes on Cumberland Boulevard, if you're familiar with that, and Cobb Parkway, Route 41. They're going to have a managed lane project that's going to be about $800 million. The circulator buses, of course, are already been purchased by Cobb County. Things are moving fast.
Well, that's a different tone, Phil, because, you know...
I was very skeptical at first.
Yeah. And
I was very skeptical at first, and
But
I'm still skeptical out there and about game day traffic. Now,
Right.
we're
That's
gonna
where
have
I was
to-
going.
Yeah.
That's where I was going.
And,
I'm
since
all
I was
right, I can't
skeptical,
contain
they've got more parking now since
All right,
I was
enough.
skeptical.
I am really skeptical because the Braves traded Andrelton Simmons.
Yeah.
What are they thinking? A Golden Glove shortstop who would have won the gold. We didn't win this year, oddly, but he probably could have won the Golden Glove for the next decade. And they traded Andrelton Simmons?
Well,
They better put some better players in that ballpark in
according
2017.
to Liberty Media, you'll be able to buy some stock directly in the Braves organization and be able to make your case.
Now, this is like buying in 1929 after they traded Andrelton Simmons. Give me a break. All right, 2 quick MARTA stories. One we had a heads up on. The Georgia gang met with MARTA's general manager, Keith Parker, when he took over. And one of the things he talked about was their paratransit, or transit for people with disabilities. And he wanted to,
very costly operation. for
right, and
MARTA,
he
yes.
said at the time, this was several years ago, we probably need to privatize that. And I remember saying to myself, well, you can forget that because of the unions.
Right.
But now it's done.
It is. It is, and I think
screaming.
that there's some Republican legislators and others over in the General Assembly who should take notice of the kinds of efficiencies that are coming to MARTA under his leadership.
And MARTA was the only top 10 transit system in the country that had not privatized their paratransit systems. And,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and then the other thing that we want to point out is that I think in this 5-year deal, MARTA is going to probably save about $18 million by outsourcing. But the good news is, and to your point about unions, the drivers who have a good driver's record, those who have good attendance will be able to keep their job and they'll be paid comparable wages to the national.
Yeah, the companies said their policy is to try to hire people who know the routes. And
So that was one of my concerns when you first read it, but the good thing is that Keith Parker and the MARTA staff have been pretty transparent about that. And look, and it's another step towards making sure that people have a good customer satisfaction experience on MARTA.
Okay, I'm going to, again, veer from my original plan and talk loose. I'm not going to talk about MARTA and their wish for another penny sales tax, because that's going to come before the General Assembly. We'll figure that out as we go. I do want to skip to the Board of Regents, however, which decided to merge Albany State University with Darton College.
Dalton, yes.
Darton.
Dalton. Is that your southern pronunciation?
No, go ahead. There's Dalton is in North Georgia.
That's correct.
Right.
And this is, never mind. Anyway, they're going to merge them.
They're going to merge
It'll
those
still
colleges.
be a majority black institution.
Right.
It will be.
That's right.
And I think that the regents are looking at declining enrollment, declining student
Well, they're looking,
participation.
they're looking at declining enrollment, and they're looking at colleges that, frankly, are drowning in red ink. And you've got several in South Georgia. You know, the population is not increasing, and so you've got several colleges, not just this merger, that they're going to have to look at. It's interesting. I did a little research on federal law with historically black colleges, and you cannot shut them down. You have to keep them going, and when they merge, you have to have them still as majority black. So it's a real problem when you're trying to find the right fit. Now, in this era of the liberals always talk about inclusion and diversity, I don't know why we have to keep historically black colleges. I'll just throw that out there. But this is a good thing, and I think that we're saving money and we're helping the students.
Well, I serve on the board of trustees for Clark Atlanta University, which is a historically black college and university. And to that point, Phil, you're right. The federal statute,
but it's a private one.
But it's a private.
it
And
is a
so,
private one.
so you got to make sure that people understand that with Albany State being a quote unquote state public institution, that law was put in place to make sure that that institution does not dilute its participation and it remains a HBCU, because there's many benefits from federal programs, and most folks who are African American who are from that part of South Georgia like to go to the institution. But I think this was a good move, and I think honestly you're going to see more college and universities having talks about merging.
Well, it was a good move, but it's hard, as I say, it's hard for a historically black college, and there's some that is losing money to merge, because there's not anywhere they can merge with unless it's a majority
It's just
white.
not HBCUs across the country. I mean, college and universities, whether it's white, Ivy League, all are struggling right now because enrollment is down and tuitions are getting higher. And higher.
But when Hillary Clinton makes college free, everybody will prosper, right?
Yeah, that'll
All
be
right,
a
we
great
got to
day.
get out. We got to get out. When we come back, a segment made to order for Phil, because the courts, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, told President Obama, you can't do what you want to do with amnesty. So stay with us. We'll be back in a minute.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at fox5atlanta.com.
The opinion polling company, Opinion Savvy, which did, by the way, a spectacular job forecasting the outcome of the mayor's race in Dunwoody. For me, I was very pleased with the outcome. It was spot on. Now they're polling the Republican presidential primary in Georgia. What do you think? Ben Carson really have the lead?
That's right. They did this a little earlier last week, and Ben Carson has a slight lead in the Republican primary electorate, 26%. Trump is down there around 24%, so it's within the margin of error. Those are the outsiders, interestingly, that are leading. Cruz was down at 13%, and the so-called establishment candidates, Rubio and Bush, 8 and 7%, and Carly Fiorina was down at 6%. Interesting dynamic.
It is.
Yeah, I like to mention that Ben Carson leads in Georgia only because those awful Republican racists How could they let a
No,
black
what
guy
it is that you have a very strong contingent of religious right supporters in Georgia and the southern
who
states.
supported Huckabee in the past.
And supported Huckabee. I mean, and when you look at where Carson's support is coming from, it's coming from that particular group. And so this is, to the poll's point, another sort of indicator that the establishment candidates like Jeb Bush and others, Rubio and Ted Cruz, are struggling because you have Carson and Trump who sort of tapped into an emotion of the religious right in these southern states. And so I think Carson is the new flavor of the month, but I think probably in the next couple of months, you'll see someone else surge. I mean, you got to keep an eye on Rubio.
Both flame out. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
All the big dogs in the political punditry business seem to think that the race is now between Cruz and Rubio.
Well,
And
I think it's still too early. All of us are veterans. All of us are veterans. It's November. We don't get into the real season until January and February. A lot can happen, and somebody can say something, whether it's good or bad. I think, Theron, your analysis, I think, is spot on, except you're missing, along with the religious right. Well, there's a populist streak that's going on in this country. Right. And I think Donald Trump and, to some extent, Ted Cruz and Carson, the outsiders, are tapping into this. And this is something where the working man of this country has been ignored by both parties, and I think you're seeing that anger.
I'll agree with you there, because Donald Trump, I finally figured out the other night watching the debate whom he reminds me of. He's the guy at your corner tavern. When you walk in, he's sitting at the end of the bar, sounding off on stuff. Let's deport him. 11 million folks, get the buses lined up. We're going to have a deportation force.
We're going to build a wall.
Two quick points.
And people like it, and people are agreeing with it.
Two quick points. So if you really look at when Carson started to surge, is when he really started criticizing President Obama with this whole "is he a Muslim" crap. And then secondly, don't give up on Jeb Bush, because the Bushes have got good apparatuses, good organizations across some of the other primary states.
Well,
and he's got a lot of money as well.
We've got a plurality race. When you look at somebody like Trump, you got 75% of registered Republican voters who don't want him to be president of the United States. So, I mean, when you look at their overall numbers,
who don't support
him for president, they don't want him. They don't support him as president. They probably don't want him because he's kind of a bombastic character. But the point is, we've got a lot of shaking out to do, and I think it could all depend on money. Right. Whose money runs out to narrow that field.
Trump is seizing on immigration, and I think this is a bigger story than we're giving it credit for. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals said to President Obama, you can't do that. That's big. It's going to go to the Supreme Court now, Phil.
Well, yeah, what the court ruled is that the Obama administration was charged with executive overreach. This is a battle between the legislative and executive branches, and he was trying to shield 5 million of these illegal aliens from deportation using the argument it's prosecutorial discretion. Well, no, it's more than that. He's actually issuing them work permits, which, in my opinion, is a stab in the back to the working Americans. But be that as it may, thankfully the court said this overreach will not stand. A president cannot do this, and now it goes to the Supreme Court.
Well, the administration came right out and said that the Solicitor General is going to appeal this to the Supreme Court.
Right.
But what this lawsuit is really doing, it's basically preventing people who work just like us every single day, who, if you really look at it, it was a common sense policy to allow these folks who work every single day to pay taxes and to hold them accountable. And that's essentially
what
the
president. They're still not here legally. That's what the argument is.
But Trump is leading the Republican field by calling for the deportation of 11 million people.
Right, which is impractical and will never happen.
But
let me say this, from a legal standpoint, I think that the court was exactly right. It probably was an executive overreach, but it's because Congress has done nothing on this issue. Zero. And so the president was bound to act.
Because the Democrats block it, we got to get out. All right, when we come back, winners and losers.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
I've already said my piece about the Braves trade of Andrelton Simmons, so I'll go now to Jeff. What do you have?
Well, Tom Houck, our old panelist, is a winner because his tour was named the best new tour. I believe it was by Atlanta Magazine. It's a terrific tour. If you haven't taken it, please do. And you'll learn an awful lot about this city and its history and its civil rights. So Tom's my winner.
All right. You have a loser?
Nope.
All right, Phil.
I've got a loser, and you've heard me talk about this before. It's Brannon Hill, this condo complex in DeKalb County right outside Clarkston. It is a disgrace. I'm actually going to be going over there with the police, try to get some health people in, trying to get code enforcement in there. It looks like you're in war-torn Syria, where the refugees are.
Are they refugees or illegals?
They're refugees. These are refugees that have been brought in by the State Department, and they've picked this area to resettle them. And I think it's not only a disservice to the taxpayers. You see, they're living in burned-out hovels. There's garbage everywhere. It's a disservice to these people.
Got to go fast. Theron?
All right, a few winners. The University of Missouri student body for basically stepping up.
Theron, I like you, but
no, I got to applaud them. It was the right thing to do. There were several incidents where
football coach ought to be fired.
You got to commend the coaches, the student body, the SGA president, and they just basically brought in the interim president, Michael Milton, to come in and clean up the stuff that's going on there. Secondly is the Georgia parents, students, school board members, counselors. The graduation rate in Georgia has increased now to 78.8%, so that's a big, big win for them. And in the spirit of Alexis not being here, she would definitely recognize Kenny Leon, who was announced this week, who runs True Colors, that he's going to be doing a Broadway cast of The Wiz. And so it's going to be on NBC December 3rd, and then it's going to be on Broadway. So those are my winners.
We have to get out. Should mention Tommy Hansen, the former Braves pitcher, dead at age 29, sadly, and Jack Mallard, who prosecuted Wayne Williams, died at 81. He prosecuted Wayne Williams and Fred Tokars and had a distinguished career. And we'll see you next week on the Georgia Gang.
The opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the panelists appearing in this program.